So on the website, this is what I've uploaded, and I'm calling this Squared Up. It is a block made out of squares and rectangles. It makes a 20-inch finished block, just like the September block of the month. I do design these in EQ8, which is quilt design software. And of course, here is the this is the rotary cutting instructions and how to lay them out. The colors are what they are just so that it contrasts enough where you can see what it is. As you can see behind me, right over here, I did not use those colors. But this is what I came up with. It's all in batiks. That's page 2 in that PDF I uploaded, which you can print out and all that fun stuff. And page 3 is yardage requirements for one block and how many pieces you have to cut out of each shape. Right over here, it tells you how many pieces to cut out of each color. Okay. Then here is the layout grid. You could actually print this out and color in or lay fabric scraps in the squares to design your own block. And last but not least, here are paper templates for the 2 patterns, 2 sizes of shapes that is used in this quilt block. Those would make beautiful tote bags also. You could make 2 of those and make a really nice tote bag. Okay. And let me get these out of my way. Boo, 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 boo. There we go. All right, so we're going to get started. I'm going to swap over to my Canon camera. There we go. And the great thing about that camera, it has zoom. So I can get really close-up shots without being a contortionist when I need to. And I'm all excited about that. So I'm going to back it out a little bit. There we go. You can see my mess. I'll go in a little bit closer here. Here we go. Okay. So I've pre-cut my pieces. And there's only 2 sizes of pieces in this quilt block. Next month, I'm going to make one that's quite a bit more complicated than this for everybody. That's the cut size is a 4.5-inch square, and the other size is a 2.5 by 4.5-inch cut rectangle. This finishes 2 by 4 inches. This finishes 4 inches by 4 inches. These squares do. And to sew them together, you can actually just look at this color chart. And this particular block of the month is all based on a 5-patch design, which means there's 5 squares going across and 5 down. So how I like to piece these is to piece these rows together normally, but in this one, this here is a little bit different. So what we're going to have to do, first we're going to piece the center strip. That's what we're going to do first, and I'm going to do that right now. So that would be step 1. You're going to piece that center strip. Okay? So we're going to take 2 of the lighter squares, and it will take 4 of the rectangles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we'll set those to the side. And I have, on my screen, I have my guidelines set up. You can see those right there. There you go, right there. You can see my guidelines. I am on the Solaris. The Altair has guidelines also. I also have on the 1/4-inch piecing foot that came with our machines. All of our machines, regardless of which one you have, Altair or Solaris, or the Crescendo, or the Destiny, or the new Chorus and Ballad, all of those machines come with this foot. And that's what we're using tonight. So I'm going to sew my rectangles on top of these 4.5-inch squares. Okay? So here's the first one. Once I finish this demo, I will stop and take any questions and we can chit chat. Okay. And I'm just going to chain piece them and I'll cut them apart as I go. Okay, cut. And then I'm just going to flip them around. And sew the other two rectangles on the opposite side of where I sewed those. And I always like to start off so my needle goes into fabric. If you don't do that, sometimes it will unthread itself. We'll cut those off. And now all we have left, we've got this unit made and this unit made. Now I'm going to sew the blue square right in the center. One of these. There we go. Right there like that. And sew this to the other side of it. That's just me, but I always like to use my foot control. Really the only time, about the only time I use the start and stop button is for embroidery. But I'm old school. I just like having my gas pedal to press down on. So there's that center strip, completely pieced. And that is this one right here. That is step one. Oops, come here you. And I just put it down in the floor. There we go. Okay, and I'm just going to set this over here. So next, I want to piece these four corners. Okay. So that's this blue color and this golden lemon color. Here's the two colors those are. Right there. And next, so what I'm going to do, I have to sew 8 units, 8 squares of this and 8 squares of this together. So that's what I'm going to do next. 8 and 8. Now with all of my block of the month quilt patterns, quilt blocks, excuse me, you could make an entire quilt out of just one block and set them together edge to edge or put sashing strips in between them. Or you can just follow along, make one of these blocks each month and then sew them all together to make a we'll be making a total of 12 different blocks. So since they're 20-inch finished blocks, that would be approximately a 60 by 80-inch quilt top without any borders. But by all means, you can make them as large as you wanted. You could make them 5 blocks by 5 blocks, and that would be a nice king-size quilt that would measure 100 by 100 inches. Here we go. Come on, you. I'm all fingers tonight. One thing with batiks, you have to do this sometimes because when you cut stacks of these squares, sometimes they kind of stick together. And it's real easy to to sew an extra layer when you don't want to. Ask me how, I know. Okay. Now I cut all of these out using my new creative grid rulers. This is what I used to cut this block out. Last month I used AccuQuilt. This month I used my creative grid rulers. And these are actually based on 4.5-inch units, cut units, not finished. So I have a 4.5-inch wide by 18-inch long ruler, which is the perfect size for this. And that's what I cut these out with. And two more. How many we got here? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's 7. I should have another square somewhere. Where are you? Oh, you're right down here. Ooh-wee. Got me worried. Thought maybe I'd miscounted there for a minute. Okay. 2 more of these. And everybody, if you notice, I am not pressing in between steps. I will give my block a final press once it's all sewn together. That's just how I like to roll. Since these are just squares and rectangles, I don't feel a need to press the seams to one side each time. But by all means, when you make yours, you can use any method that you're comfortable with. Okay, and we'll just cut these apart. 1, 2, I should have 8, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Perfect. Now I'm going to take these units. Come here. I'm going to sew 2 of these together. So I have 8 units now. I'm going to sew 2 of these units together so that they look like into a 4 patch, like so. And I'll end up with 4 units like this. And that's for the 4 corners of this block. So now we're just going to do this. And watch what happens here. When I line this up here, and here's why here is why I do not press each step of this, because I can just finger fold those seams so that they're butted up against each other and feed them through my machine. I don't have to press to make that happen. Here we go. There's one. And 2. Get those lined up. What I'm doing, I'm lining up my starting point, 2 seams so they match. My seams will match perfectly each and every time. I'll line up that other end. And one more, that was 3. Here's number 4. And yes, I do butt those seams so they're going to the dark side, each and every one of them. And what I have found over the years, if you do this and then you take it to the ironing board to press them flat, it just all nice falls into place. You can see right there how nicely those seam lines match up. And now, okay, so here's where we're at. We have that center strip already pieced. It's right there. And I just pieced that, and that, and that, and that. Now I need to make these 2 units, and then I'm going to sew that side and then that side. So first, I'm going to sew the rectangles to the squares right here. That's what we're going to do next. Here are the pieces. We should have 2 of those and 4 of those, and there they are. Okay. I'll show you another little trick. When you're chain piecing, you don't always have to clip your threads in between pieces in the chain. I will clip that one. Now I'm not going to snip them apart, I'm just going to flop them over and do them again. That does save a little bit of time, because then you only have to pick up your snips or scissors one time. A little trick I learned working in the sewing factories back in the 80s. It was all about how much production you could make when you worked at a sewing factory. Okay, I'm going to just snip those 2. There are those. Easy peasy. So next, we are going to take one of these units and sew them right there like that. Blue square. These here are in the upper or in the outside corners, the blue squares go. So we're going to make 2 units exactly alike. Okay. So as I'm looking at it, right here, it would be my upper left corner. Look at it this way. Right here is this square. Right here is that square right there. So that means I know this will go right here. And yes, I could have used any of my machines. I could even have used my serger to have done this. But since I'm getting ready to totally reset the studio, there are piles of stuff everywhere out of camera view. Some of it is in camera view, which you can see, but okay. Okay, and we'll do another one exactly like that. So we're making 2 units exactly alike. That would go there. Upper corner, and that would go right there. So we're going to go right here. And yes, you could lay this all out on the design wall and take your pieces off as you go like that. And if I wasn't filming, that is probably how I would be doing it. Okay, there's one. Now I am going to snip it this time because the pieces are getting kind of big. Okay, so now I have 2 units like this. Okay, exactly alike. Now I want to put the bottom parts in. And as you can tell right here, blue, yellow. So here it should be yellow, blue. Yellow, blue. Okay, so the next ones will go on these like so. Okay, they would not go like that. They would go like this. You're going to turn them. Okay, so that would go there like so. Okay, there's one. Just put that on. And you can see here, I've completely made, that's 2/3, no, 2/5 of that block. Okay, we're going to make one more exactly like this to make the other side of that block. Okay, so we just did this, and now we're going to do these. And check it out. Since I'm piecing two just alike right here, if I flip it, there's that opposite side. They're exactly the same. Okay, so right there, light, middle strip, light. And we'll get this lined up. Get my edges all lined up nice and tidy. Okay. So what I've done, I have created, this is one strip, there's my middle strip, and there's the other strip. Okay? Let's check it out. That one would go like that. This one will go right here. And this one will go right here. Okay, so I just have two long seams to sew, and guess what? That block is done. Okay. And on this one, it doesn't matter if it's that way or that way. You just want to make sure you sew the blue to the lavender and purple. The only seams to line up on this run is right here. These two centers, that's the center square right here, this blue, and right there you have two seams to line up, and then just line up the ends. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start at the top of the seam and take a few stitches. Of course, you can pin it if you want to. Totally cool to do that. But what I'm going to do right here, let me come in just a little bit closer. Oops, wrong way. There we go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to line up the first seam that I have to match right here. I'm going to put those two seams up together, and here's where you could pin it or wonder clip it. But I'm just going to line it up and sew it down. I'm going to do the same thing. Here's my second seam that I have to match. I just butted those two seams up against each other. Okay. And now all I have to do is line up this end, and we're golden because there's no seams to line up. From here to here, there are no seams you have to match. Okay, one more seam to go. Check it out. And they lined up perfect. Check out those seam lines right here. Oops. Right there, there's one of my matches. And right there's the other one. Oops, right there. Okay, so now we're going to do another one here. Cramp, hand cramp. Okay, so this is where our next piece goes. Oops, that's not the right way. That way is. Blues in the corner. There we go, right there like that. Get that top of that seam started, then I'll line up everything else as I go. And yes, I do have my stitch length set to 1.8 millimeters. When I'm piecing, I like to use a shorter stitch length. That way I don't have to backtack to tie off an end, because you're not going to pull them out if they're 1.8 millimeters in length. Okay, there where my finger is, there's my first seam line. I'm matching up. I have the seam lines butted up against each other in opposite direction. Okay, I'm going to match up that second seam line right there. And I'll match up the end. And you know what? That block is done. That's how easy it is to make. And that is a 20 by 20 inch finished block. Let me back that camera view up. Oops, that was it. There we go. And there's that block.